Hello. The 2024 Summer Olympic Games are just around the corner, and international fervor is at its highest. Soon, we'll be able to see some of the best athletes on Earth compete against each other for national pride. All the favorite sports are on offer: track and field, gymnastics, fencing, rock climbing, breakdancing. Okay, not everything is a winner, but there's one sport that doesn't see any love from the IOC or really any international sports body: auto racing. Racing can be just as athletic as anything else, but hasn't had a legitimate international championship since the A1 Grand Prix Series ceased operations back in 2009. Let's solve that, at least in concept, shall we? Here is how I would set up racing at the Olympics, or a Racing World Cup if you want to hold out a season every year. Let's jump right in and discuss the admin stuff, starting with the car. Because it's the fastest, most reliable spec open-wheel car on offer, each driver will pilot a Dallara IR18 powered by a non-hybrid twin-turbo V6 engine. Now, I would love to bolt a V10 to the back of these things, but I think that wouldn't be possible without just straight-up overhauling the whole design of the car. Now, normally the suppliers for IndyCar are solely Chevrolet and Honda, but for this, we open it to anyone who is willing to supply. Honda and Chevy will supply for the vast majority of teams, but others will get engines from other suppliers. Renault will supply for France, Monaco, and Belgium. Mercedes supplies for Germany, Switzerland, Austria, the Netherlands, and all of Africa. Ferrari will supply for Italy, San Marino, Spain, Portugal, and Brazil. And those are just the regular works suppliers. Here are all of the rebadged engines through sponsorship or affiliation with the base company. As for rules, the FIA's rules on road courses are to be used for the road course races, since it's a pretty solid rule set. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it. On the ovals, I am not touching NASCAR's rules with a 39.5-foot pole, so IndyCar's rule set it is. Let's enforce them a bit more consistently than Indy does, though. Now, while this creative exercise is purely wish fulfillment, I'm going to give this a bit of realism by acknowledging that drivers' schedules and commitments are wildly different. Not every driver can make every race. So, each country will have a primary representative and as many as 3 alternates to fill in for when one or a few of them can't make it. As such, the point standings are scored by country and not by driver. We don't want a bigger country like America or Great Britain being screwed out of a top place because their primary representative couldn't make every race. You can switch who your primary is at will, but in the interest of not making it this an exploitable loophole, you can't switch out your primary until the one that was already set has raced twice. So, for example, say there's an oval track coming up and Country X wants to switch their primary driver from someone in Formula 1 or sports cars to someone who runs in NASCAR. That substitute will also have to run the road course next round, and vice versa. There's also no enforced penalty for missing a race altogether. You can come and go as you please. Speaking of points, here's how the scoring system's been set up. It's not a total rip-off of Formula 1's system, but it's heavily based on it. I'll spoil a bit of this for you. As many as 70 countries and drivers will be attempting to qualify for every race, but only 26 can make each race in accordance with FIA law. Look, having 70 cars on track at once, what do you think this is, the 24 Hours of Le Mans? Qualifying is done one at a time, 2 hot laps for each driver, unless they crash during their laps, in which case they bring out their backup car for the race and start at the back of the grid, or not qualify for the big show, or at all, depending on how fast their first lap time was, or even if they set a lap. We do away with the time qualifying sessions and whatever the hell Super League Formula was doing for something more classic. I understand that this would get tedious and time-consuming when or if all 70 drivers attend, but on the other hand, it makes qualification entirely merit-based. We don't get slower drivers making the field because they made up time slipstreaming off of someone who actually deserves to be there. If there are less than 38 drivers that show up, the slowest of them DNQ, as per. If more than 38 drivers attempt to qualify, those that DNQ will be put into a consolation race with its own points system. If more than 52 drivers show up, though, then there actually will be DNQs, as there will be 26 drivers in the A main and 26 in the B main, as it were. As for driver qualifications, there is no requirement for what FIA license you should have, just a requirement on age. You are only allowed to race if you are over the age of 18, with one exception which we will get to later. But now, without further ado, let's go over who all will be participating in this Racing World Cup. We'll start from North and South America and then move our way east around the world. First up is the United States, which was already a very complicated decision to make. The boys in red, white, and blue will be primarily represented by Colton Herta, with Joseph Newgarden, Logan Sargent, and Kyle Larson as backup options. Now, had he not had his massive accident, the runaway no-brainer decision for Canada would have been Robert Wickens, but since he's still recovering and has to control the car with his hands, it doesn't seem like he has a necessarily fair chance. Perhaps having him on as a strategist for Team Canada would suffice, it just wouldn't feel right to not have him involved. Instead, GT champion Bruno Spengler will represent Team Canada, with his alternates being Devlin DeFrancesco, Alex Labbe, and... Lance Stroll. It pains me to say that. Mexico will be represented by Checo Perez primarily, with Pato O'Ward, Daniel Suarez, and Esteban Gutierrez backing him up. Colombia is attending, and will be represented by one of the greatest, most underrated race car drivers of all time, Juan Pablo Montoya. His sons Sebastian Montoya, Gabby Chavez, and Tatiana Calderon have all been selected as alternates. Brazil's representative would have been Felipe Massa had he not retired, but Felipe Drugovich is a worthy replacement. He's joined by Pietro Fittipaldi, Sergio Sette Camara, and Lucas de Grassi. Argentina has chosen Agustin Canapino to represent them on the global stage. While you can argue that Jose Maria Lopez is faster, Canapino was chosen due to his familiarity with the car. Oh, and Franco Colapinto's here too. He's their third option. We now leave the Americas and head to Africa for one selection. South Africa will be represented by the Van der Linde brothers, Sheldon and Kelvin. Kelvin will act as the primary as he has accomplished more. Jonathan Aberdeen will back them up, and it would have been a four-way dance between those three and Thomas Scheckter had he been in better health. Now, we're in Europe. Most of the British Isles are represented by drivers from the BTCC. Ireland is represented by Aaron Taylor-Smith with James Rowe Jr. and Ryan Collins as backup. Scotland has Rory Butcher with Aidan Moffat and Ryan Dalziel as backup. And Northern Ireland has four-time BTCC champion Colin Turkington with Charlie Eastwood and Dan Harper as backup. England is represented by Lando Norris, with Ashley Sutton, Jamie Chadwick, and Jenson Button as alternates. If you're asking where Lewis Hamilton is, who gives a damn? Portugal is represented by Antonio Felix da Costa, with Felipe Albuquerque, Alvaro Parente, and Thiago Monteiro as their backup options. Spain had quite a few candidates, but for the sake of familiarity with the car, Alex Palou has been chosen to represent Spain over Carlos Sainz, Antonio Garcia, and Roberto Merri. Monaco has enough people to drive the cars despite the country's size, with Charles Leclerc leading the way over Stéphane Richelmy and Stefano Coletti, who I'm surprised is still active. France will be represented by Pierre Gasly, with Romain Grosjean and Théo Pourchaire as two of the three backups. In an attempt to diversify the disciplines on offer, we have foregone Esteban Ocon in favor of Aurélien Panis. Stoffel van Dorn, Amaury Cordeel, and Bertrand Baguette will represent Belgium. Italy has less to choose from than I thought they would when I first started reading this. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is the runaway favorite on raw talent alone, but he's only 17. So, for the sake of experience, Antonio Giovinazzi will be the primary driver for Team Italy. Antonelli, Valentino Rossi, and Antonio Fuoco will back him up. Now, the Netherlands have exploded in racing popularity due to their success by their countrymen. The land of orange smoke will be represented by the one, the only, Nick de Vries. For those of you that complaining about the lack of Max Verstappen, I say unto thee, if you want this to be competitive, keep Max Verstappen as far away from this as humanly possible. Besides, I don't want his psychopath of a father to start bitching up a storm whenever he doesn't win. De Vries, Richard Verschoor, Rinus VeeKay, and sim racer Jarno Upmeer will represent Holland. Germany will be represented by The Mick, with Nico Hulkenberg, Pascal Wehrlein, and Andre Lotterer as alternates. Switzerland is represented by Sebastian Buemi, with Ralph Boschung and Ricardo Feller as backups, although Feller may replace Buemi as primary if worse comes to worse. Scandinavia has an all-star cast, starting with the Dane Train. Kevin Magnussen is their conductor, with Christian Lundgaard, Nicky Thiem, and Frederick Vesti as his backups. Norway has Dennis Olsen as their primary rep, with Dennis Hauger and Isla Haugren backing him up. Sweden is represented by Marcus Ericsson, with Linus Lundqvist and Felix Rosenqvist as alternates. And finally, Finland is depressing. Kimi is gone, Leto is gone, Rosberg by technicality is gone, but Valtteri Bottas, Jesse Krohn, and Marcus Amand are still here, and they have been chosen to attend. That chaos zone south of the Baltic will be represented by the immortal Robert Kubica, with Roman Belinsky and Jacob Schmiekowski as backups. Austria has chosen Thomas Preining, reigning DTM champion, alongside Matthias Lauda, son of racing royalty, and Ferdinand Habsburg, son of actual royalty, to represent. Now, while it would be a political nightmare, the Russian Federation has been invited to attend, and they have brought Daniel Kvyat, Timur Boguslavsky, Vladislav Lomko, and Sergei Sirotkin to drive for them. Israel had more than I thought they did when I started, with Robert Schwartzman as their leading voice, with Roy Nassani and Alon Day behind them. Moving on to Asia, India will be represented by Jehan Daruvalo, with the Maini brothers, Kushan Arjun, and the GOAT, Mahavir Raghunathan, backing him up. The People's Republic of China's runaway favorite is Guan Yu Zhou, with Yifei Ye and Ho Pin Tung backing him up. Japan has quite a bit. Yuki Tsunoda will be their first option, with the alternates being Takuma Sato, Kamui Kobayashi, and a surprise pick and former Le Mans winner Ryo Harikawa. While you may argue that Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri are more talented, Australia has chosen Scotty McLaughlin to be their primary driver, with Will Power as their fourth option. And finally, New Zealand was a tough decision to make. While Scott Dixon is more acquainted with the car and Liam Lawson has youth and pace, I decided that the pure raw talent of Shane Van Gisbergen overpowers all of that as the primary driver. Now, of course, this is not everybody. There are plenty of countries that either only get one representative or only get a representative on a technicality, such as dual citizenship or heritage, and you can see all of them right here. Now that covers all of the drivers that will take part in the Racing World Cup. Now what does the schedule look like? I decided on a 12-round season, 7 road courses, all of which Formula 1 aren't using right now, and 5 ovals since there isn't a good oval track in Africa that's properly safe. We start the season in Europe, at the Circuit Nevers Magny-Cours, a track that Formula 1 is weirdly averse to going to. I've always wondered how an IndyCar would take this place, and this could be the kick up the ass the FIA needs to stop beating around the bush and bring it back on the tour. Round 2 is held at Mallory Park's oval track. I would have put Rockingham here had it still existed, but since it's now an empty lot, Mallory Park it is. Round 3 will take place at the Circuit Zolder in Belgium, another Formula 1 track. It lives in the shadow of Spa-Francorchamps, but it looks just perfect for IndyCar. Round 4 brings Indy, at least technically, to its triumphant return to the Lausitzring Oval. Just watch those old kart races from the 90s and 2000s back again. This track was capital G great back in its heyday. We now move south to Africa, where there isn't many racetracks on offer, but we do have the Marrakech Street Circuit in Morocco. It's not being used for anything right now, so us having our race there makes us the biggest thing in town. After Marrakech, we have the Kyalami Circuit in South Africa. This track has been screaming to get a date on the Formula 1 calendar, so again, maybe this is the wake-up call the FIA needs to get up and go to South Africa right now. And now we go to South America, with Round 7 at the Autodromo de Tocancipá, the only permanent racetrack in Colombia. It has not been graded by the FIA, which is different from every other road course we go to, which may be a problem with safety. If only they didn't demolish Jacarepaguá. For Round 8, we go to Argentina, to the Autodromo Ciudad de Rafaela, an absolutely massive track that's even longer than Daytona while being just as fast. There's no safer barriers around the oval, but that can be arranged. At Round 9, we go to Asia and Oceania with Adelaide's Street Circuit. Formula 1 held consistently good races here in the past, but it's since fallen unused for them. Let's change that, shall we? Round 10 sees Indy's equipment return to Twin Ring Motegi's oval for the first time in almost 14 years. Again, go back and watch those races again. Motegi is a damn fine racetrack for Indy. The penultimate race will be held at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, formerly known as Mosport Raceway Park. Fun fact, Formula One held races here back in the 70s. Most people don't know that. Most people know it as a track that once hosted NASCAR's Truck Series. This is a track that I would really like Indy to go to in real life someday. It's a damn fine track. And finally, we end the season on the greatest racetrack on this planet Earth. To end the Racing World Cup, we come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for a 400-mile event around the oval. To be frank, the Brickyard needs more prestigious events. I love this track with all my heart, and I would adore seeing it in an Intercontinental Series of Champions. And so that does it. That's how I would set up a hypothetical Racing World Cup. How do you like it? Is there anything that I need to improve? What would you do differently? Hit me up in the comments below. I have been Bobcat205, and thank you for watching. See you next time.